Africa, with its rich and multifaceted history, has often been the backdrop for tragic events, including the violent murders of state leaders. These dramatic moments not only led to the destabilization of individual nations, but also impacted the future of the continent, highlighting the intricate web of political tensions, power struggles, and foreign interference. Presidents who governed during turbulent times frequently paid the ultimate price, and their deaths became emblematic of the ongoing struggles for independence, justice, and lasting peace in the region. Samuel Doe, a sergeant in the Liberian army and a politician, played a pivotal role in one of Liberia's most violent chapters. Born on May 6, 1951, in the small village of Tuzon, located in Grand Gaeta County, he belonged to the Kron ethnic group. His ambition and determination set him apart, helping him rise through the ranks in the army. His military career culminated in 1980, when, at just 28 years old, he led a coup d'etat that ousted President William Tolbert, ending over a century of dominance by the Americo-Liberian elite. Doe's ascension to power marked the onset of an era of dictatorial rule that had devastating consequences for Liberia. As the nation's leader, Doe imposed an oppressive regime, crushing any opposition and persecuting ethnic minorities, particularly those who refused to align with his rule. His regime became synonymous with corruption, the abuse of power, and brutal crackdowns on anyone daring to challenge his authority. Although initially backed by the United States, growing domestic and international discontent over his dictatorship led to increasing outrage. By 1989, Liberia had plunged into civil war, sparked by Charles Taylor, a former government official under Doe, who launched an insurgency aimed at toppling the regime. The civil war was savage, and Doe, having lost control of most of Liberia, found himself in a perilous situation. In August 1990, things took a dire turn when Doe was captured by rebel forces under the command of Prince Johnson, one of the most notorious and ruthless faction leaders. His capture is remembered as one of Liberia's most horrific episodes. Doe was taken to Johnson's base, where he was publicly tortured. Scenes of his interrogation and brutal torture were videotaped and later circulated globally, eliciting widespread shock and outrage. During his torture, Doe was forced to endure the mutilation of his body, including the severing of his ear, while being subjected to more beatings. Despite his immense suffering, Doe never disclosed any crucial military information, which some interpret as a final act of loyalty to his people. The torture lasted for several hours before he succumbed to his injuries. His mutilated body was later discarded in the street, symbolizing the complete collapse of his power and influence. Muammar Gaddafi was one of the most controversial and distinctive political figures of the 20th century. Born in 1942 to a Bedouin family in Sirte, Gaddafi, at just 27 years old, led a coup d'etat in 1969, overthrowing Libya's monarchy and establishing a regime grounded in his Third Universal Theory, a proposed alternative to both capitalism and communism. For more than 40 years, Gaddafi ruled Libya with an iron fist, transforming the nation into a dictatorship shaped by his personal vision of Islam and Arab socialism. His regime was marked by severe repression of opposition groups, the suppression of free speech, and foreign interventions, all of which led to numerous international conflicts. Gaddafi earned a reputation as a leader who would stop at nothing to retain power. His involvement in sponsoring terrorism, including the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie in 1988, cemented his international notoriety. Despite this, his regime remained intact for decades, until the Arab Spring in 2011. Inspired by uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, Libyans initiated a rebellion against Gaddafi's rule. The conflict swiftly escalated into a brutal civil war, capturing international attention and prompting NATO to intervene by launching airstrikes against Gaddafi's loyalist forces. Gaddafi's position grew increasingly weak as rebels seized more territory, eventually forcing him to flee Tripoli. His downfall culminated on October 20th, 2011, when the convoy he was traveling in was attacked by NATO forces near Sirte, his hometown. Wounded in the attack, Gaddafi was swiftly captured by rebel forces. Rather than being taken to trial, his captors chose to deliver immediate and brutal justice. Held in harsh conditions, Gaddafi was beaten, humiliated, and tortured. One of the most disturbing moments occurred when a rebel wounded him with a bayonet. Despite Gaddafi's desperate pleas for mercy, they were ignored, and he was eventually shot to death. Videos capturing the grisly event circulated worldwide, showing the brutal end of the longtime leader. After his death, Gaddafi's body was paraded through the streets of Misrata, allowing the public to witness firsthand the fall of a man who had once been regarded as an unshakable leader. His body was then displayed in a local grocery store's refrigerator, a grim symbol of triumph over his regime. Laurent-Désiré Kabila, a Congolese revolutionary and politician, was instrumental in toppling the dictatorship of Mobutu Sese Seko, and briefly served as president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Born on November 27, 1939, in the mineral-rich Katanga region, Kabila was deeply involved in revolutionary and anti-colonial movements from a young age, drawing inspiration from Marxism and Pan-Africanism. During the 1960s, he attempted to incite a revolution in the Congo, though his efforts initially failed. Despite these setbacks, Kabila remained politically active, organizing guerrilla groups in his region over the following decades. His opportunity came in the 1990s when widespread discontent with Mobutu's government reached its height. In 1996, with support from neighboring Rwanda and Uganda, Kabila launched a rebellion that sparked the First Congo War, also referred to as the Great African War. By 1997, Kabila triumphantly entered Kinshasa, declaring himself president and renaming the country from Zaire to the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, as president, Kabila quickly alienated many of his initial supporters. His rule became synonymous with authoritarianism, a lack of transparency, and continued brutal repression of opposition forces. His relations with Rwanda and Uganda, former allies, deteriorated, leading to the eruption of the Second Congo War, one of Africa's deadliest conflicts. This war involved multiple countries and factions, leading to the deaths of millions, mostly civilians. Thomas Sankara, a charismatic and revolutionary leader from Burkina Faso, emerged as a powerful symbol of the fight for social justice and African independence from neo-colonialism. Born on December 21, 1949, in Yako, in what was then the colony of Upper Volta, which Sankara would later rename Burkina Faso, meaning the land of upright people. Sankara was drawn to revolutionary ideals and social justice from an early age. His dedication led him to a military career, where he quickly established a reputation as a capable and committed leader. In 1983, amid escalating political and social tensions, Sankara orchestrated a coup d'etat, bringing him to power. As Burkina Faso's president, he launched an ambitious reform agenda aimed at transforming one of Africa's poorest nations into a self-sustaining, equitable society. His policies, which promoted economic independence, feminism, anti-corruption measures, and the dismantling of elite privileges, gained him widespread support, both domestically and internationally, but also made him many enemies. Sankara became a leading figure of African nationalism and anti-imperialism, boldly criticizing Western powers and their influence on African politics. His reforms, which included large-scale vaccination, education, and anti-hunger initiatives, dramatically improved living conditions in Burkina Faso. He also pursued a policy of cultural revival, urging a return to African traditions and the rejection of Western influence. Despite these accomplishments, Sankara's radical reforms and rejection of international aid in pursuit of true independence faced growing resistance, both internally and externally. Sankara's tragic demise occurred on October 15, 1987, when he was assassinated during a coup d'état orchestrated by his close ally and friend, Blaise Compaoré. Sankara and 12 of his associates were killed when rebels stormed the government headquarters in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. He was shot on the spot, and his body was hastily buried in an unmarked grave, an attempt to erase his memory and suppress his revolutionary ideals. Sankara's assassination reverberated across Burkina Faso and the African continent as a whole. His death resulted from betrayal and political power struggles that interrupted a brief yet transformative period of revolutionary change. Blaise Compaoré, who assumed power after Sankara's murder, swiftly reversed many of his reforms, aligning the country more closely with Western powers. This led to widespread criticism and accusations of betraying the revolution's principles. Patrice Lumumba, an iconic figure in the African independence movement, became a symbol of resistance against colonialism and the power struggles of the Cold War. Born on July 2, 1925, in Onalua, Belgian Congo, Lumumba belonged to the Tetela ethnic group. He distinguished himself early in life with his intellect and charisma, soon emerging as a leading advocate for Congo's independence. In 1958, he founded the Congolese National Movement, which quickly gained national prominence and became the first political party in Congo with widespread support. Lumumba's efforts culminated in Congo's declaration of independence on June 30, 1960, with Lumumba becoming the first prime minister of the newly established Democratic Republic of Congo. His vision of a united, independent, and just Congo faced strong opposition both domestically and internationally. His refusal to bow to Western influences, particularly from Belgium and the United States, made him a target of intense hostility. Not long after taking office, Congo was plunged into turmoil, with ethnic and regional tensions rising. The mineral-rich province of Katanga, backed by Belgium, declared secession, sparking a political and military crisis. Determined to maintain national unity, Lumumba sought assistance from the Soviet Union, a move that, during the Cold War, alarmed the West. In retaliation, the Belgian Secret Service, in collaboration with the CIA, orchestrated a plot to depose him. In December 1960, Patrice Lumumba was captured by government forces loyal to Colonel Joseph Désiré Mobutu. Held under brutal conditions, he endured repeated beatings and public humiliation. In January 1961, Lumumba was handed over to his enemies in Katanga province, where his opponents harbored deep hatred for his policies. On January 17, 1961, Lumumba was executed by a firing squad of Katangese soldiers, with the support of Belgian officers. After his death, his body was further desecrated, dismembered, and dissolved in acid, in an effort to obliterate any trace of his existence. This barbaric act was intended to erase not only Lumumba's physical remains, but also his legacy. A juvenile Habyarimana, who served as the president of Rwanda, met a violent and tragic end in 1994, an event that directly precipitated one of the most horrific genocides in modern history. Born on March 8, 1937, in Gisenyi, a region in northwestern Rwanda, Habyarimana hailed from an ethnic Hutu family. After receiving military training, he quickly rose through the ranks of the Rwandan army. In 1973, following a military coup, Habyarimana seized power from then-President Gregoire Kayibanda, and he ruled Rwanda for over 2 decades. Habyarimana established an authoritarian regime dominated by the Hutu ethnic group, with his rule characterized by the repression of the Tutsi minority, further inflaming ethnic tensions in Rwanda. Despite this, his power remained secure for a long time, bolstered by the support of France and other Western nations. In the late 1970s, under international pressure, Habyarimana agreed to peace talks with the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, a Tutsi-led group, in an attempt to end the ongoing civil war. His presidency came to a tragic end on April 6, 1994, when the plane returning him to Kigali from peace negotiations in Tanzania was shot down. Also on board was Cyprien Ntaryamira, the president of Burundi, along with other high-ranking officials. The aircraft was struck by a missile, crashing and killing everyone on board. To this day, the identity of those responsible for the attack remains uncertain. Habyarimana's death directly triggered the Rwandan genocide, where, over a span of just 100 days, approximately 800,000 people were killed, the majority of them Tutsis, along with moderate Hutus. This wave of violence led to mass slaughter on an unprecedented scale, shocking the world and leaving Rwanda devastated. Although Habyarimana is often seen as a dictator who stoked ethnic divisions, his assassination symbolized the start of one of Africa's darkest historical episodes. Anwar Sadat, the third president of Egypt, left a profound impact on modern Middle Eastern politics through his life and dramatic death. Born on December 25, 1918, in Mid Abu al-Kum, a small town in Lower Egypt, Sadat was drawn to politics from an early age, eventually leading him to a career in the military. He played a pivotal role in the Egyptian Revolution of 1952, which overthrew the monarchy and established the republic. After Gamal Abdel Nasser's death in 1970, Sadat assumed the presidency of Egypt. Initially underestimated, he soon surprised both allies and adversaries with bold decisions. In 1973, he led Egypt in the Yom Kippur War against Israel, a conflict that revitalized Egyptian military morale and restored prestige across the Arab world. However, Sadat's most historic move was his decision to pursue peace with Israel. In 1977, he became the first Arab leader to visit Israel, an unprecedented gesture that laid the groundwork for the Camp David Accords, culminating in the signing of a peace treaty with Israel in 1979. Despite global acclaim, the treaty drew severe backlash across the Arab world, where Sadat was often viewed as a traitor to the Palestinian cause. Domestically, Egypt faced unrest as well. Sadat's in-fita policy of economic liberalization aimed to modernize the economy and attract foreign investment, but it exacerbated social inequalities and fueled widespread discontent. Increasingly isolated both internationally and within Egypt, Sadat faced mounting opposition from radical Islamists and traditional elites alike. On October 6, 1981, during the annual military parade marking the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, Sadat was assassinated in a shocking attack. The event, held in Cairo, was meant to showcase the strength of the Egyptian military and celebrate Sadat's leadership. During the parade, members of the radical Islamic group Al-Jihad emerged from a military truck and opened fire on the reviewing stand where Sadat was seated. He was struck multiple times and later died from his injuries in a Cairo military hospital. Sadat's assassination sent shockwaves through Egypt and the world, symbolizing the intense opposition to his policies. His successor, Hosni Mubarak, would rule Egypt for the next 3 decades, adopting a cautious approach toward Israel and maintaining internal stability. Anwar Sadat remains a divisive figure. To some, he is a hero who courageously pursued peace. To others, he is a symbol of betrayal to Arab nationalism.